In the world of gaming, Yuji Shimomura is best known as the movie director for Devil May Cry's 3 through 5 and the cinematics director of the Bayonetta series. This man has played a pivotal role in the two most iconic franchises in the stylish action subgenre, so I believe he deserves a bit of attention. In this video, I will go over his career, explore his influences, and analyze an example of his work. There's quite a bit more to talk about here than I anticipated. My research brought me down some pretty interesting rabbit holes, it led me to discover a new passion, and I came out of this project with even more appreciation for the man than I already had. So with that, let's get into it. First off, what does he do? Well, despite the difference in title, he did basically the same thing for DMC and Bayo. He directed cutscenes, primarily those involving action, which is to say, he directed most of the cutscenes. He choreographed the action, coordinated and directed the previs reference scenes that would then get passed off to the motion capture team, and he edited the final cut. This is a very important role, particularly for games in this genre, and you need look no further than the credits of these games where his name is often alongside the director and producer to confirm that. Although stylish action is typified most by gameplay, by mechanical depth, that depth is ultimately in service to a superficial goal: to embody the character you're playing, make cool stuff happen on screen, to essentially direct, star in, and produce an awesome action scene. And that goal, the standard players aim for, is set by the context of the game, by the characters, the cutscenes, and in large part, Yuji Shimomura. Hell, you can see mechanics in these games that are direct adaptations of stunts from his cutscenes. From the shallowest to the deepest level of these games, for those who play once for the story and those who play them properly, his work is paramount. And as such, it's fortuitous that the guy is just really good at his job. So who is Yuji Shimomura? Well, the most important thing to get out of the way, Yuji is not a gamer. His passion is, and has always been, film. As a kid, he became a huge fan of Hong Kong kung fu movies, particularly those of Jackie Chan, and this is what inspired him to enter the world of action cinema. Now, this is a realm of films I was completely unfamiliar with going into this project, so I watched quite a few, discovered I loved them, and saw why Jackie in particular stood out to him. This man is the GOAT, and he will definitely be coming up later because while his influence on action in media is all-encompassing in some way or another, I think it's fair to say that his style is a direct antecedent to what you would expect from stylish action games, and Yuji is perhaps the strongest link between them. Before stepping out into the world, Yuji studied stunt work and acting at the Kurata Action Club in Osaka under seasoned Hong Kong action star Yasuaki Kurata. Kurata has an insane filmography, having acted under a range of legendary kung fu directors, as well as having rubbed shoulders with, if not acted beside, if not having fought, every legendary actor in the book. So Yuji started off with a very solid, very Hong Kong-informed base before even beginning his career. In 1995, Yuji moved to Tokyo and began working as a freelance stuntman while also making indie action films on the side with his friends. As a stuntman, he was hired to work on a German TV show called Puma by the now world-renowned Hong Kong action star Donnie Yen. While working on this project, Donnie became a mentor to Yuji. He taught him more about editing, what to pay attention to when directing, and to this day, Yuji will cite Donnie's tutelage when talking about his own work. Donnie himself was a student of Yuen Ping, possibly the most important name in action cinema. Besides being a prolific director of Hong Kong kung fu movies, besides being the man who jump-started both Jackie and Donnie's careers, this is also the man who directed the action scenes in The Matrix, and as such is credited as the guy who brought kung fu to the Hollywood mainstream, and action in media has literally never been the same since. I think it's really cool, if perhaps unsurprising, to see such a direct link between the creator of the most influential action movie of all time and stylish action games. You know, while researching, I was expecting a lot of so-and-so was inspired bys, but not a clear-cut, this dude personally taught this dude who personally taught this dude. And the more I look into it, the more it seems that everything really does kind of come back to this guy. Young Yuji was first inspired by Jackie Chan, who was launched into stardom when Yuen Woo-ping directed his first action comedies. Yuji was first taught by Yasuaki Kurata, who is best known for his appearance in Yuen Woo-ping's Fist of Legend. He was then taught by Donnie Yen, protege of Yuen Woo-ping, and he went on to work on Devil May Cry, a series that likely took some influence from The Matrix, as most things action around that time did. Yuen Woo-ping, dude. My conspiracy board is looking concerning right now. But all this to say, I don't know if Yuji could have asked for a better education. Trained by two masters of the industry in stunt work, acting, directing, and editing. For someone who had never made a kung fu movie in Hong Kong, he was as direct a descendant of the art form as anyone could be. Now, I realize that probably doesn't mean much to you if you don't know what kung fu cinema brought to the table. What filmmaking principles did it codify or champion? What did people take from it? And for the sake of this video, I think I only need reference two things. The first, most famously, is the notion of beauty in action. That fight scenes can be impressive and mesmerizing displays of coordination and physical prowess, much like ballet.
And I don't want to be working in ballet.
That the viewer can be moved by the sheer spectacle of the performance alone. Second would be the notion of action as characterization. That motion is a language, and you can communicate who someone is through how they move, or how they fight. Not principles exclusive to the genre, of course, and exceedingly commonplace in today's day and age, but regardless. Those are two characteristics of the legacy Yuji inherited in Kung Fu, and if you can already see how they're applicable to stylish action games, yeah. But let's get back to Yuji's career. In 1996, one of Yuji's independent films caught the attention of up-and-coming director Ryuhei Kitamura, who brought him on as action director for the 2000 movie Versus. For clarification, an action director, a role that isn't very common in Western productions, is someone who directs the action. That is to say, they aren't the director of the movie, they just handle action scenes. Versus was Yuji's debut as an action director in a non-indie film, and it sought to showcase a more Hong Kong-inspired approach to action, with fast, elaborate choreography, fantastical elements, and, perhaps nodding to Jackie movies, a lightly comedic tone. From the perspective of someone researching Yuji's filmic background to see how it applied to his work in games, Versus is a very interesting movie. Look, he's got a sword. And a gun. The plot of Versus, spoilers by the way, the plot of Versus focuses on two brothers facing off. They don't have real names in the movie, so I'll just call them Dante and Virgil. Virgil wants the blood of a lady to open a portal to the underworld, yes really, and Dante doesn't fucking like him. The two brothers face off and Virgil wins, but this ends up reawakening Dante's lost memories and giving him the power to defeat Virgil in their next encounter. Yeah, that's really similar to the plot of DMC3, a year before DMC1 even came out, mind you. This movie did very well in Japan, putting Yuji on the map, and given its domestic popularity, I wouldn't be surprised if it did play some part in the conception of DMC3. Perhaps director Itsuno or scenario writer Morihashi were inspired by it. Perhaps Yuji was selected in part because they noticed the script was so similar to the movie he had worked on, or perhaps Yuji's involvement influenced some things. Impossible to say without confirmation, and Yuji won't return my emails, but it was a surprising find to say the least. If you're a fan of DMC, if you're a fan of wacky, low-budget action movies, I recommend checking it out. It's a fun time. He keeps doing that. After the release of Versus, Yuji's career really started to take off, and it's around this time that the company Yuden Flameworks comes into the picture. For fans of action games, this logo should be familiar. Without speaking Japanese, it's hard to find a lot of info about the formation of this company. At time of writing, Yuji is the CEO, he has top billing on their website, and I'm inclined to suspect he founded or co-founded it with his colleagues, but I can't say for sure. This is the company he would go on to work through. An action creators team that offers action direction, wire stunt coordination, and in-house stuntmen for film and games. From around 2003 onward, if Yuji's name was in the credits, it would often be accompanied by Yuden Flameworks. It was also around this time that Yuji broke into the world of gaming. His first contributions were to Ghost in the Shell standalone complex as an action coordinator, Xenosaga 2 as action director, and to Onimusha 3, where mentor Donnie Yen, who was working as action director, look at his drip, brought him on as a mocap stuntman for its award-winning opening movie. He's that one. No, he's that one. That might be this, of course, got his foot in the door of Capcom, and in 2004, Capcom's Hideaki Itsuno enlisted the help of Yuden Flameworks for Devil May Cry 3. And that brings us up to speed for the sake of our interest. From there, Yuji has worked on the DMC sequels. His work on them got Hideki Kamiya to go out of his way to get him on Bayonetta, and he even caught the attention of Jeff Keighley's real-life best friend and was brought on for Metal Gear 5 and DS2. You know, if Kojima likes you, that's how you know you're in the film industry. He's worked on a few other games, but film has remained his main passion. He made his full-on directorial debut, as in The Director, in 2006 with Death Trance, a movie I would recommend to absolutely no one. To quote the leading actor Sakaguchi, "What a shit movie." He has since worked as action director for the live-action adaptations of Gantz, Bleach, and Inuyashiki. He did Alice in Borderlands, the Kingdom series, and many, many more. He even worked on some music videos, including a couple for Genesis. Yeah, the Genesis from Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. It's really him. The last movie he full-on directed was 2016's Reborn, and this one kinda slapped though. It premiered a new fighting style called Zero Range Combat, and I'd recommend looking into the creation of this movie because it's pretty interesting. Also, if you've noticed the same actor in every movie I've showed off, yes, this is Tak. He's great, and a frequent collaborator with Yuji. From Versus to Reborn, these two are the Dr. Dre and Eminem of the Japanese action cinema sphere, probably. Name a more iconic duo. Finally, before we move on, Yuji co-founded the Japanese Action Guild with a group of his peers in 2020. A foundation that aims to connect people interested in action, educate future generations, and fight to secure worker benefits in the action film industry in Japan. Yuji has stated that the industry is currently suffering from a lack of young stuntmen, and he aims to revitalize interest in the genre while making the landscape more hospitable. Pretty fucking based, if I do say so myself. I do wonder, though, if the lack of young stuntmen, the lack of interest in young people wanting to do action, is in any way related to his games? Kung Fu movies inspired generations of kids to recreate the stunts they saw in them, driving many to enter the industry, and you can even follow this inspiration to the development of arts like breakdancing and parkour. However, any aspirations to do cool stunts and fights that I certainly did have as a kid have been more than satisfied by playing games like DMC. Anywho, that is Yuji's career in a nutshell. But before we get to the cutscene analysis, I also want to talk a bit about his idol Jackie Chan, because I think his influence is evident particularly in DMC and Bayo. Now, I draw this connection because Yuji always talks about how much his work was influenced by Jackie, but tracing direct influences here is a bit tricky given the Yunwo ping of it all. Yuji saw his come up around the time Kung Fu and Jackie himself became mainstream and influenced action everywhere.
Doesn't matter what culture you are, martial art no longer an Asian thing. It's a world trend. It became a part of our life, right? You see it on TV, you see it on cartoon, you see it everywhere, right?
As such, it is ultimately impossible to distinguish what Yuji took directly from Jackie from what he absorbed through cultural osmosis. Nonetheless, there is doubtless something to be said for the fact that most creators that began incorporating Kung Fu into their work didn't study Jackie since they were children. Yuji did. So, Jackie Chan. Jackie is obviously an icon of cinema, and I'm sure a lot of you know all about him, but in case you don't, check him out. His pre-Hollywood movies are phenomenal. What this man has done on camera is legitimately and consistently awe-inspiring, and I'd consider his action scenes from decades ago to still be perhaps the best ever made. fucking real. He actually did that. While researching this video, I watched quite a few Hong Kong kung fu movies to get a lay of the land, and two things in particular distinguished Jackie's from the rest. Then I found out these are like the only two things people talk about when it comes to Jackie. I could have just Googled it. The first being tone. Most kung fu movies of the 70s, 80s, and somewhat into the 90s were straightforward, serious movies, whereas Jackie's were action comedies. I mean, a lot of kung fu movies were very cheesy and often unintentionally funny, but Jackie's movies overtly embraced the comedic, and this clearly had some effect on Yuji.
そのジャッキーって実はアクションって言ってもただ戦ってるだけじゃないんですよね。ちょっとしたそのユーモアがあったりとか、物を使ったりとか、なんかそういうものがこう見ててワクワクさせてくれたりしたので、なんかそういう作品を。まあ、作品のジャンルにもよるんでしょうけど、僕の中では常に何かユーモアを入れていきたいなっていう、だからその全くアクションが知らない人が見てもちょっとこうなんか引きつけるようなもの。
However, the role humor played in Jackie's movies is kinda distinct from what you'd find in a straight-up comedy. His movies weren't supremely silly. Character and plot weren't compromised for punchlines. They were, while obviously being vehicles for action first and foremost, honest-to-goodness stories that took themselves and their characters seriously. It's just that they had this tone to them. I would call it exaggerated reality, but I think the word for it might be camp, where everything is a bit extra. Characters are extra in their expressions, motivations, and actions, to the extent that it borders on the comedic, but it will only step into full-on comedy occasionally. Perhaps this is just my modern sensibilities failing to appreciate what was considered completely ludicrous and knee-slappingly hilarious at the time. Perhaps it's a cultural thing, but yeah, that's how I'd characterize the tone. Exaggerated reality that borders on the comedic. The kind of movie that has you smiling more than it has you laughing. More fun than funny. And I think this approach makes a lot of sense given the goals of these movies. Action is at the forefront, and fight scenes are enhanced when the viewer is invested in the characters, the conflict, and the stakes, which is hard to achieve if the story doesn't take itself seriously when it needs to. In this way, the action tempers the comedy. The comedy, however, enhances the action. The underlying sense of exaggerated reality gives the action scenes license to be way more off the wall than they otherwise could, to include insane choreography, incredible moments, and fun bits.
Boom, it's a comedy.
Without compromising the viewer's suspension of disbelief. It also allowed for, or was in part constituted by, stunts feeling at home outside of action scenes. The actors leveraging their talent in mundane scenarios to make proceedings more entertaining and memorable. Fans of stylish action games should probably see where I'm going with this. This tone permeates the genre. You can absolutely feel it in the games Yuji's worked on, but also in those outside his purview. God Hand, MGR, Hi-Fi, even Ninja Gaiden to some extent. They each have their own distinct identities, of course. Not all of them play as close to the line of comedy as others, but that proximity to comedy, that campiness, that sense of exaggerated reality that makes ridiculous action feel at home is present in, yeah, I'd say most games in the genre. Well, at least past a point. In the earliest days of the genre, before you could even really call it a genre, games definitely took themselves more seriously. The Onimushas, DMC1, 2, Shinobi, and Nightshade feel more akin to straightforward, cheesy action movies. But the genre started to veer closer to the comedic with Kamiya's Beautiful Joe in 03, and it's mostly stayed there ever since. Coincidentally enough, this cultural shift came shortly after Jackie started making Hollywood movies and attained global stardom. Coincidental indeed. DMC3 marked the turning point towards comedy for its series, and is of course when Yuji entered the picture. Now, I don't think he was responsible for the game heading in this direction, but he was certainly part of a positive feedback loop that increased momentum in that direction. This is what the developers wanted to go for anyway. Yuji, having studied Jackie's movies religiously, was in his element, and the lengths he went to pushed the developers further in that direction. Upon hiring Yuji, director Itsuno told him he liked the idea of doing silly things seriously, and that he wanted to make a game that made people say, wow, people are capable of these kinds of movements? And unsurprisingly, Yuji was very receptive to it. I mean, that just sounds like he's pitching a Jackie Chan movie. And speaking of, The second thing that made Jackie's movies stand out from their contemporaries was the choreography. Besides being fucking mental, seriously, these movies have the best choreography in anything I've ever seen. What stood out most was how Jackie leveraged elements of the set in creative ways. I felt kinda smart when I made that observation, but then I found out this is the thing he is literally most known for. I could have just Googled it. The man is an absolute wizard with furniture. In every movie, he will do something cool with a chair.
You chair.
Could always expect his fight scenes to have fun with whatever happened to be lying around. Other kung fu movies I watched would have a cool environmental moment here and there, a novel use of a prop, but Jackie's movies consistently pushed the buck in these regards, and this philosophy of using a set or prop to its fullest is something that I think rubbed off a lot on Yuji, and it comes through most in his games. This is down to taste, but I think a lot of his best fight scenes are those in which he has the most things to play with, which is a bit of a shame because they are the minority of his scenes. But even when his options are limited, you can see he will try to do something novel or extra with whatever he has to work with. As for why this approach is seen more in his games than his movies, well, I think it's pretty simple. This shit is really hard to do in real life. Besides needing actors with the talent and willingness to perfect these stunts, you also need a shit ton of time.
And the most difficult thing is when I throw the fan and coming back for one shot. More than 120 tick. Those kind of scene, when you see it in 2 minutes or 1 second, if, oh, Jackie, good. It's not good. You can do it. Except, do you have the patience or not?
It's all well and good for Jackie to say patience here. The Hong Kong action cinema landscape allowed productions to take a lot of time to shoot and reshoot and reshoot. Partially, there's a lot of factors here, but partially because there was never as much money on the line as there was in Hollywood productions. It didn't cost $1 million a day to be on set.
それに対忍者最後の戦いって何日間ぐらいかかったんですか？
最後だけで1ヶ月ちょっとかかった。
For your average filmmaker, this level of choreography is practically unfeasible. But that's not the case when it comes to animation. Yuji's games are perhaps the only times he could feasibly achieve, if not surpass, Jackie-esque choreography. And as such, it is in his games that we see him apply this philosophy most. This is not the only benefit the shift in medium afforded Yuji, but we'll get to that later, because for now, I think that's enough on his influences. They will come through in the scene we'll be looking at. But before we move on to the analysis, I want to outline what I see in Yuji as a director. And it comes through in this quote. How the good guy kills the bad guy is just as important as why he's doing it. Yuji is excellent at conveying character through action and framing. He's very good at imbuing each shot and each movement with as much value as possible. I mentioned character through action as one of the principles Kung Fu cinema codified. It is something that many action filmmakers concern themselves with. But Yuji's ability to make good on this philosophy is exemplary. I think he is one of the greats, a worthy heir to the storied legacy of Kung Fu, and a pretty unique figure for his exploration of this art form through the medium of games. So with that, let's check out one of his scenes. Can you guess which one? And for peace of mind, I have to say that this scene, all of his scenes, are of course collaborative efforts. Yuji undoubtedly played a critical role and cut the final piece himself, but I'm not suggesting that all credit goes to him for every decision. This is but one example of many amazing scenes he's contributed to, and I'm appreciating whoever's responsible. So let's get to it, and I think you'd agree there's no better place to start than what a strong opening shot. Gun, pizza, picture. Already, we know we're dealing with someone dangerous. Someone who keeps their gun at the ready. Not in a safe or a holster, but on the table next to them as they eat. We're dealing with someone who orders pizza. Maybe they don't cook much. Maybe they don't care much about their health. Maybe this is an exception. This person eats at their desk, perhaps implying that they're very invested in their work, whatever it may be, and we're dealing with someone who has emotional ties to something. They keep a picture of something on their desk, perhaps implying that they're invested in their work in part because of whatever this thing is. It's been 3 seconds and already we have a lot to work with. Then Dante appears from his bathroom, drying his hair with his fingers after presumably taking a shower. This guy puts his fingerless biker gloves on before his t-shirt. Or maybe he never took them off. He was wearing his boots in his bathroom. That's gross, right? These details are in the game. You can extract character from them if you want, but I'm willing to move on. The devs did not model Dante's feet. Cowards. They did not model his hands sans gloves, but they did model his bare chest and arms, and we're all very glad they did. This is the first instance we'll see of a unique limitation of the medium Yuji had to contend with. You're given the character model you're given, and sometimes you just have to work with what you've got. Drying his hair with his fingers belies a devil-may-care attitude. It's not as efficient as using a towel, but it'll dry soon enough. The phone is ringing, but he displays no sense of urgency. I'll get there soon enough. Then Shimomura starts doing his thing. What the fuck was that? So Dante's chair was lying on the ground, which again reinforces the devil-may-care attitude. You can imagine it fell over when he last got up, and he didn't bother picking it up because he didn't need to yet and doesn't care that he's made a mess. Then when he did need it, no dialogue yet, and we've firmly established Dante's character by having him sit in a chair and answer the phone. What have we learned? Well, that he's effortlessly efficient and unreasonably cool. This little maneuver is far more expedient than picking the chair up, sitting in it, and answering the phone, but it requires comical coordination. A mastery of one's surroundings. Mastery that Dante exhibits reflexively, as if it's second nature to him. In this, we see perhaps what informs his devil-may-care attitude. When he wants to get something done, he can do it exceptionally well, as a matter of fact. It's easy to adopt the "we'll cross that bridge when we get to it" mentality when you know there is not a single bridge you can't cross in style. And of course, he ties the action of putting his feet up to answering the phone. This is a guy who doesn't bother exerting himself any more than he needs. A guy who finds creative solutions to problems. A guy who has little patience for the mundanities of life and the talent to avoid them when he can. There's a nice little detail in how the camera moves. For what should be a spectacular stunt, you'd imagine the camera would want to display it as best as possible. And the camera does indeed stylishly pan around the chair as a focal point. But as a result, there's a moment where the phone and the pizza box consume the screen and block the action. It's kind of like the camera is reflecting Dante's careless attitude. It is concerned with being cool, but it's also not too fussed about appearances. Stylish, but messy. This sequence is ridiculous, and it sets the tone immediately. Exaggerated reality that borders on the comical. We're gonna have fun here. This is Devil May Cry, and that is one small example of Shimomura's approach to directing. Make every action count. Drying his hair, sitting down, answering the phone. There is potential for every instance to hold some value, be it characterization, humor, spectacle, or some combination of the three. If you're going to spend time showing something on screen, might as well ensure that you're getting the most out of that thing. It's easier said than done, and I can't say Yuji meets this standard in every shot, but he's got a pretty good batting average. I also suspect that this might be our first and most overt homage to Jackie Chan. I meant it when I said in every movie he will do something cool with a chair. I think it's fair to call it a trademark. And the fact that Yuji's first environmental stunt here involves one feels intentional. In this way, Yuji introduces Dante first and foremost by evoking who he believed to be the master of action, implying that Dante could sit beside him. However,
Don't totally copy me. You should copy a little bit me, then more create yourself. Then becoming your way.
the fashion in which Dante performs this stunt, the attitude he has, and the reason he's doing it couldn't be less Jackie.
Sorry, not open for business yet. I haven't even picked a name for this joint, and I'm already getting calls.
This shot establishes our villain of the piece, Arkham, and it's nowhere near as expositive because we want to keep him mysterious for now. Instead of characterization, this shot is concerned with aura. Camera pullouts are often used to pull the surrounding context in. You can go from being in a character's head back to reality. But here, there's nothing else really being revealed by pulling out, so it feels more like the camera is retreating from him. Him looking up, in context, is him surveying the shop, but in a meta sense, you can kind of get the impression that he's aware of the camera and the viewer in an unsettling way. And I say unsettling because of the eerie music and the cold body language. All of this together just works perfectly to put us on edge.
You a customer too? Well, if you want to use the bathroom, help yourself. The toilet's in the back.
Is your name Dante, son of Sparta?
Where did you hear that?
Although we just got a look at his face, once he enters the shop, the camera refuses to give us a clear shot of him. I think this is because he's now in Dante's presence, and Dante doesn't have any idea who he is. Keeping him hidden and Dante in view establishes the dynamic between them to us. I love this shot. It's framed so that Dante's head just remains clear of the blades while they obscure Arkham completely. It conveys an uncomfortable sense of distance between the characters, with them being as far apart as possible while remaining in frame. Of course, Dante is high, Arkham is low, and it subtly establishes the ceiling fan. It's not the focus, but now we know it exists, and it will be important later. This is followed by a cool, forced perspective shot, with Arkham's hand consuming the screen, making Dante look tiny by comparison, and straight up blocking our view of him, implying that he views Dante as lesser, insignificant, a piece or a pawn for him to finger. It should also make you aware of the pool table, even if your attention isn't drawn to it.
Son of Sparta.
Where did you hear that?
Now he approaches Dante, we finally get a good shot of him, but not a good look. His back is to the light, so his face is cast in shadow. We do finally notice the thing on one half of his face, and there's some really cool framing to accompany it. He's standing half in front of the wall, half in front of the window. The asymmetry of the background accompanies the asymmetry of his face, and although we don't know it yet, Arkham is very much a character, and this story as a whole very much a story about opposing halves. And very fittingly, this shot is accompanied by the first mention of Dante's brother. We get this shot panning down to Dante's necklace, accompanied by a gleam to communicate that this is what Arkham is interested in. Make a note of that trick. Starting the shot on Dante's scowling, uninterested face before revealing the real point of interest also implies that this is what Arkham is going to have to go through to get that. Another shot reinforcing the theme of asymmetry, and that's enough of Arkham. You see what I mean when I say Yuji's good at characterization through framing? Not paying any mind to dialogue or music, it's clear that this dude is sus as fuck, Dante doesn't know who he is, there's tension between them, he sees Dante as a cog in his grander design, he wants his amulet, and asymmetry is a thing. Then this happens.
He sent this invitation for you. Please, accept it.
Shimomura, of course, chooses the best camera angle possible to capitalize on the visual of the table flipping. We again get a display of Dante's effortless control over his surroundings. However, when he lands, we see a new side to him. We get a POV shot to emphasize that he's scanning his surroundings, then we see him doing so. He's serious now. When the situation demanded, he switched modes in an instant. But then, when he can't find anything, he immediately switches back to his laid-back attitude. Yeah, a creepy dude came in here, knew who I was, that shouldn't happen, mentioned my estranged brother, flipped my table in an alarming display of inhuman strength and disappeared, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. We might get to it in 3 seconds, for all I know, but until then, pizza. And there's a touch of comedy to put us back at ease with him. I really can't understate the benefits of humor as a tool, and I think it's a very interesting addition to the world of Devil May Cry that has its roots in horror. I mean, Itsuno has said the essence of DMC is a feeling of death that pervades the visuals and atmosphere. And yeah, aesthetically and conceptually, DMC is dark, tense, violent, horrific even. And you're adding comedy to that? Well, both Yuji and Jackie Chan have talked about how adding comedy to a fight scene can essentially soften what would otherwise be received as violent or gruesome to relax the viewer and make it more enjoyable.
I like action, but I hate violence. When you doing an action sequence, put the comedy, the audience, they will forget all the violent things.
The same can be true when adding humor to an atmosphere like this. And that may be counterproductive if the story is trying to scare you, but that's not what Devil May Cry is.
He was obsessed with becoming the devil, so much he killed his own wife!
What brings this all together, what makes the marriage of humor and horror make so much sense here, is Dante. This shit may be creepy, but it don't faze Dante, and humor can bring the viewer in line with that. This instance here is a perfect example. We just had a sequence building tension, Dante relaxes immediately after because he's Dante, and this comedic beat relaxes the player along with him. This kind of broaches on a whole other topic I find fascinating, the idea that DMC is a subversion of Gothic horror, where the point of Gothic horror and architecture is to impress upon the subject their insignificance in the face of God, and DMC evokes a Gothic aesthetic only to put us in the shoes of someone who is greater than God for the sake of telling a story about the individual's capacity to overcome God. There's an excellent video on this by The Gaming Muse, absolutely check it out, but enough with the tangent, we have cinema to behold. So the demons bust in and interrupt my wank, our wank. Provided you're unfamiliar with DMC, this shot is pretty shocking. Your boy's dead. And you have the psycho strings in a rising portamento to imply that horror is approaching or whatever until... Now, this shot reads to me as a bit of one-upmanship. The original DMC had Dante impaled before shrugging it off and turning the tables. Well, what if we impaled him as many times as possible from every angle? It's juvenile, but I like it. This is also our first notable instance of Yuji grappling with that limitation I mentioned earlier. You get the character model you're given, and you have to make do with what you've got. These dudes here, prides, have this gloomy, agonized expression. They're demons. They're meant to look, tormented? You can see what they were going for, but it is kind of a goofy face, looking bewildered or appalled. As such, when they appear and encircle Dante, we don't get a good look at their faces. They're just a mass of whipping black robes in the glow of red eyes. When we do get our first look, it's quick, incredibly close up, and angled slightly from the top down, so it's a little distorted. We don't get a great impression of the expression. Holy shit, those words are opposites. It comes off more as angry. All of this care taken with how the enemies are presented to maintain a sense of threat until... And now we get a good look at them, when their bewildered expressions are absolutely appropriate. What? Oh. Also pizza. This small sequence is classic subversion, building the tension from the slow-mo to the music to the inherent horror of the situation, only to undercut it as unharmoniously as possible. The horrific is pretty mundane to Dante. The power dynamic has been flipped on its head, spun on its head. A new track starts. A new brand of tension is being built. You can already tell these guys are fucked, but not yet. This is something new from Dante. The thing with the chair was just him achieving something expeditiously. He wasn't flexing for anyone, but here he's explicitly showing off. The first taunt in the game, if you will. It's our first hint to the fact that Dante can enjoy applying his talents. He doesn't just use them to coast. Although the context in which he can enjoy them may be a bit concerning. Anyway, we're about to see Yuji flex his Jackie-esque creativity. We have 3 blades sticking out of Dante, he's armed with a head, and everything will be put to good use. Now that is like the chair. Expeditious problem solving and insane situational awareness. Now we have another cheeky subversion. The gun twinkles just like the amulet did. You know what that means? Nope. Another touch of humor, again reinforcing how in control Dante believes himself to be. We get an overhead to re-establish the scenario, we see that more demons are advancing from behind, and we're subtly reminded that the fan exists, so... More of the same from Dante, making it look effortless as always, and finally, the music swells to another subversion. Before we finally get the pitch. So this is an interesting reference. The trope of hitting something, typically a jukebox, to make it work is the trademark of a character called the Fonz from the 70s American sitcom Happy Days. I kinda doubt that Yuji is a fan. He might be, but it's more likely he learned of the trope through cultural osmosis, and it's one he's particularly fond of.
The hell you doing? I just got this baby yesterday and...
Less hot air, more gas.
Whether or not Yuji's aware of the origin, it's a pretty appropriate reference. Arthur Fonzarelli was the epitome of cool in pop culture for a time, and making Dante seem cool is obviously a priority here. As such, Dante emulates this quintessentially cool action here and takes it to a humorous extreme. Fonzie didn't fucking smash the jukebox, but of course it still works. This might also be a nod to Jackie Chan's Project A. Funnily enough, this was the first Jackie movie I watched, and it was at this moment exactly when the relation to Yuji's work started to register to me. Anyway, this moment also shows us a new side to Dante. For the first time in the story, the joke is on him. We finally see a chink in the armor. The guy's good, but no, not everything is gonna go his way. And he scoffs it off, but this actually got to him. He got pissed. He's able to put on a devil-may-care attitude in otherwise extreme peril because he believes himself to be in control. But for a second, he's not, and that triggers him. Of course, it's funny that of all the things we've seen so far, this is what bests him. The juxtaposition of this darn thing just ain't working with the literal demons from hell descending upon him, but it reveals a surprisingly short temper, an immaturity. We see that perhaps this man eating pizza half naked with a gun isn't as well adjusted as he first appeared. It only takes a small crack in his careless, I'm in complete control persona for him to shatter the rest of it himself. But now that the music is on, look, he's smiling. He's tapping his foot. And we see in no uncertain terms, yeah, he's enjoying himself now. This is how he has fun. And pizza. And action! We begin with some melee brawling. Shimomura is making sure to get as much use out of the blades impaled in him as possible. He cuts an enemy's scythe in half, impales a guy with it, cuts a guy with it, uses the blade in his leg to hook a guy in the back of the neck and launch him into the air, the velocity of the kick removing the blade as he does so. He impales a guy with the one left in his arm to hold him in place, and in the brief reprieve this earns him, he downs the slice of pizza in one bite. In one frame. This is the most impressive thing he does in this scene. The guy he sent flying comes back down only to get kicked away, and Dante removes the final blade. Yeah. Itsuno hired the right man for the job. What an excellent 10 seconds we've got here. Just having an absolute blast with the idea of Dante being impaled and moving on before the novelty wears off. From a symbolic perspective, he fights with the blades you struck him with. If you hadn't hit him, he'd be far less deadly right now. Dante is the killer he is because of trauma, blah blah blah. It's neat. But now that he's got no blades to fight with, it's time he pulls out the big guns. Or the gun. Cinema. He didn't have to do that. Across his work on games and movies, I think Yuji is really good at making awesome fight scenes with guns. I mentioned his atrocious movie Death Trance, and the two times I actually perked up were whenever guns were involved.
There we go.
It's a gun sword.
Hell yeah.
Definitely down to taste. If you take guns seriously and appreciate when they're used intelligently and realistically, this isn't for you. The trick is that his gunfights are often just melee fights, where he uses gunshots or bursts of gunfire to emphasize strikes and movements. You can give a punch a bit more punch. I think it's incredibly effective. I like the flashes and the loud bangs. They make me pog. And I guess it's serendipitous that this would just happen to be the foundation of Bayonetta's fighting style. Anyway, now we have Dante mounting a dude like a life-sized tech deck? Do they make those? At first you think he's just giving the guy road rash, but no. As usual, 2 birds with 1 stone. And look how much fun he's having! The force from a bullet pushes this guy into the leg of his pool table, knocking it over. We get a shot of demons taking bullets to the face. Then Dante slides his tech deck up the now tilted pool table, launches this dude into the ceiling, falls back onto the elevated side of the pool table, and... Okay. He catches his sword and cuts his pool table in half? Okay. Kicks each half into a demon, and that draws us to the close of this scene, as the player takes control and is prompted to match what they just saw. So, that is an action scene. That was fucking sick. How he kept momentum going through tiny setups and payoffs, the environmental stunts, the cinematography. Bro, there is a lot to talk about here. Let's start with momentum. I think you could break this fight into 2 halves, both of which use different yet equally effective methods of keeping the scene flowing. The first half uses the multi-enemy approach. Dante will hit an enemy, buying enough time to hit the next, and as he's hitting the next, the first enemy will be readying their counterattack, or falling into position. Yuji's shots will both communicate Dante landing a hit and establish the thing he needs to respond to next. Dante hits Demon A, I'll call him Max, so he has time to kick Ian and parry a scythe. And in the background of this parry, we see Max counterattacking. Dante responds in the next shot, and there's a cheeky punch on Sally, that one's a girl, to keep things spicy. Then he launches Max, and in the shot we get to appreciate that, we also see Freddy and Patrick approaching. He responds to Freddy, I guess Patrick despawned, then pizza, just in time for him to switch back to Max as he falls back down. There is never a moment to sit still. Every shot gives us an action and sets the next one up. It also feels like Dante is convincingly fighting multiple enemies at once, and they're not just waiting their turn to attack, even though they are. This style of choreography is great. It's engaging, it's mesmerizing, and unsurprisingly, it was popularized by
1 people fight with me, bang, 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 bang. Then the 3 people behind just like this. Then after, see? Then another one coming. Bang. Why not 4 people come together to find it?
After the sexy shing of the gun, we switch to Yuji's next mode of maintaining momentum. It's still an exercise in marrying setup and payoff, it's just that rather than seeing the payoff alongside the setup, here the payoff is the setup. Dante sliding around on Kevin is a cool attack in and of itself, but it also leads into him getting his gun. Now he can spray bullets everywhere, and he sends Zachary flying into the pool table. The focus of this shot is Zach getting bonked. You could see this as a payoff, when it's actually set up for... You could see this as a payoff, when it's actually set up for... And so on and so forth. Every action is both an end and a means to an end, so A, Dante always has something to do next, and B, the scene just flows effortlessly. Dante is but a marble in a Rube Goldberg machine of death. It's beautiful. It's kung fu. And look at how it's edited. Look at how Yuji moves the camera. Check out how the camera moves here, darting from one point of interest to the next while pulling out. It clearly conveys what's happening, focusing on what's most important at the moment, and the jerkiness of the movement complements the jerkiness of the choreography. It's not a succession of fluid actions, it's like move, 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 and the camera mirrors that. The camera also progressively moves upwards, as if to convey the action literally ramping up. It's cool, but the next shot is brilliant. We cut as Dante yanks his arm away from Freddy. Cutting right as this happens emphasizes the force behind the motion. He's not simply moving his arm away, he's pulling it free from the blade, and the cut works to denote that moment. Then, to accentuate the movement of his arm, the camera swivels away from him in the opposite direction, making the movement look faster. The camera continues to swivel around Dante, and we see he is reaching around himself for his gun. So the swivel doesn't just emphasize the motion, but it also mirrors it. We swivel around Dante as Dante swivels around Dante, and we swivel to our next point of interest. The swivel is very fast, making the scene more frenetic, but once we reach the gun, we get a second of slow-mo to ground the viewer and make it clear what Dante's doing. I don't think this shot would be legible without it. Finally, the swivel speeds back up, it lands on a perfectly framed frame of our character and our next interaction, and this shit's so cool we play it twice from a different angle. I think this is the best shot in the scene, and it's a perfect demonstration of Yuji's approach to action camera work. He uses cuts and camera movements to emphasize and punctuate actions. He reflects the energy and rhythm of the fight with the camera, and although that energy is usually fast-paced and frantic, he will ensure that whatever is most important is still clearly legible. He's also wont to use very quick cuts to achieve this effect when he feels it appropriate, such as here when he cuts twice in under a second to show each demon getting smashed by the table. Funnily enough, Yuji's philosophy to camera work here actually stands in stark opposition to that of Jackie Chan. Jackie prefers longer cuts with less expressive movement, if any.
I never move my camera, always steady, wide angle. Let him see I jumping down, I do the flat.
He wants the camera to essentially shut up so the viewer can fully appreciate the choreography, whereas Yuji likes the camera to sing along with it. This style is something that began appearing around the turn of the millennium alongside the proliferation of digital cameras. You could move these things so much more freely than what was previously available, and you can see Yuji and his friends playing with that fact in his early days. This allowed for more expressive cinematography, and filmmakers could more easily explore new ways to complement the action being filmed. That being the case, I personally tend to prefer Jackie's approach. Wild camera movements and frequent cutting can easily make a fight scene messy and incoherent. They can often be used as a crutch.
When the camera angle movement, that means the actor, they don't know how to fight.
However, I find Yuji's brand of directing and editing particularly tasteful in this regard. On close inspection, it's always clear what he's going for. He often achieves multiple things with any single cut or movement, and he does always manage to clearly convey what's happening. He never just does it to do it, you know? Like, he never just shakes the camera to give the shot more energy. Yuji's movements always have far more direct intention behind them. What's particularly noteworthy here, though, is the fact that you realize this shot is impossible, right? Think about it. How would you shoot that? And that's the thing. You don't. The freedom a digital camera afforded filmmakers is quite literally nothing compared to the freedom afforded by animation. The camera clips through one of the actors. And yeah, this is interesting. In an interview, director Itsuno talks about how DMC3 came at a turning point for the gaming industry in Japan, where companies like Capcom began to outsource more of their work to creatives outside the industry. DMC3 was an early example of a filmmaker being brought on to contribute to a game. Yuji was an early example of a kung fu-informed action filmmaker being brought on to contribute to a game. Well, besides games where that was the point. I wouldn't say Yuji's directing and editing here was breaking new ground. I mean, it might have been, I don't know, but it was still certainly novel. An action filmmaker trained in the sensibilities of kung fu, having his limiters removed and being told he can put as many cameras as he wants, wherever he wants, and move them in ways we still might not be able to with modern technology. See this? Play that twice from a different angle? You don't need a multi-camera setup to do that anymore. You don't need to do the take again and hope it looks the same anymore. Whatever whim you may have, you can actually do. And seeing Yuji Unchained, knowing this was only his second or third time playing with a camera in CG, he makes it look like second nature. You can see him truly realize his style of directing and editing, and there are some really neat touches to appreciate. You have the slight camera jostle as Dante lands on Kevin to emphasize impact. You have the camera holding stationary until Dante picks up the gun, kind of making it feel like he's picking up the camera. And you have the focusless shot here while Dante's riding around. At first, it looks like a POV shot, but then Dante enters the frame and it's kind of disorienting, which of course complements the notion of spinning around and sliding across the room. We have this moment of pure video game magic where Dante slides Kevin face first into the camera, only for the camera to clip through him so the shot can continue. I'm actually surprised how well this works. It took me, hundreds of watches to really clock how silly that is. Then we have this instance here, where the shot cuts as Dante lands on the pool table. The cut itself marks the moment of impact and makes it so they didn't need to animate Dante's model interacting with the table, and we cut to the back end of the table where the consequences of this impact are most exaggerated. Again, cutting to the best possible angle to appreciate what's happening. And finally, we have this. And I think this is where Yuji may have gotten a bit carried away with the possibilities of the technology he was working with. You have this incredibly fast swivel to accompany the movement of Dante slashing his sword. So fast, only a literal killer robot could move a camera like this in the year of our Lord 2026. So fast that I don't think it actually reads. Played at full speed, it kind of just looks like a stray frame. It adds a frantic energy, I suppose, but I think the actual swiveling movement is kind of lost. It's really interesting to watch the pre-viz footage compared to the final product and see how camera placement and movement change. Sometimes the difference isn't that drastic. There's limited footage from DMC3, but I think it's kinda telling that in both the pre-viz and the mocap session, they show off the fight scene until you get to the impossible camera movement. I'd bet money this was something he came up with in the editing software. And watching the previs scenes from Bayo, and especially DMC5, you get the sense that he's learned what he's able to do in this medium and can visualize the finished product much earlier in the process. I think Yuji's directing and editing is honestly pretty inspired, and unfortunately it will probably be what you miss most in his live action movies where the limiters are back on. But I'd recommend, when watching his cutscenes, to pay attention to what he's doing with each cut or movement. There's often something to say, and think about how you might capture the shots he gets if it were a live action production. It's a fun exercise. But let's get back to our scene and talk a bit about how Yuji leverages the environment. We have quite a few examples of Jackie-esque choreography here. The fan, the blades, using the pool table as a ramp, and of course, this is the hypest stunt of the scene. This is what you walk away remembering, and I would actually say it's become Yuji's trademark. Hitting things that hit other things that hit things. He does it a lot, but he does only do it once per game, probably so as to not wear it out. This instance here, though, serves as a good example of a particular way Yuji often employs Jackie's philosophy of using the environment. When doing something cool with a prop or the set, he will often, not always, but often, evoke tropes, or reference other disciplines that are generally considered physically impressive, and then push them to an extreme. This here is the trope of a pool player getting all the balls in the holes with one shot. To push it to the extreme, the balls are in midair and his pool cue is a gun. Other examples would be Dante riding a missile like a tech deck, doing football trick shots with a soul-sucking demonic artifact, Lady spraying guns while doing an uneven bars routine, Bayo bull riding while taking out a group of enemies, dancing on a table without knocking anything over, figure skating with a victim for a dance partner, and doing the famous tablecloth trick. I think I know where he got this one, though. This could just be something Yuji likes doing, but I do have a theory as to why he makes references like this, based on the fact that he doesn't really do this in his movies. Jackie's environmental stunts aren't usually referential. They're freeform, I guess? They're just really impressive and intricate sequences, and my theory is that someone would have a much harder time choreographing stunts like this for a game. Jackie has the benefit of him and his team physically being on set, getting to touch the props, try things out with them, and form a routine through experimentation and collaboration. For Yuji, the set and the props just exist in his head. Sure, he can have stand-in props, but those may differ significantly from the assets that end up in the game. As such, a lot of the choreographing would be completely conceptual, and when that is the case, in trying to come up with fun things to do, I imagine the mind would more readily jump to things it's already seen. Tropes. You know, if I asked what's something cool you could do with a table, I think I would get a different answer from someone who thought about it to someone who tried things out with a table. This habit of evoking tropes, though, does afford Yuji a pretty useful tool when it comes to handling different characters, in that he can distinguish characters through which tropes he chooses to evoke. I think the most prevalent example is how he plays up difference in gender. Pool, tech decking, and football are generally considered more masculine, whereas table dancing, gymnastics, and figure skating are considered more elegant, refined, and consequently feminine. Even bull riding. I know bull riding isn't elegant and most bull riders are male, but I don't think I'm alone in saying that when I think of bull riding, I think more of
Oh my god, how embarrassing!
than the actual sport. Is it a sport? Activity. And this actually loops us back to where we started. Yuji building character through action. So finally, before we wrap up, what can we derive of Dante from this little fight? Well, we of course get more of his talent, his insane situational awareness and creativity, but we also get enthusiasm, playfulness, joy, as well as the apex of his "we'll cross that bridge when we get to it" mentality. Dude really lives in the moment. Pool tables are expensive, but he's not going to pass up the opportunity to crush two demons with it if it's convenient. I doubt he'd want bullet holes all over his walls, but when's the next time he'd get a chance to do this? This cheeky smile before shooting the ball says it all. Oh, this is going to be so sick. With absolutely no mind for the consequences. And of course, later in the story, we'll get...
Damn it! You guys totally wrecked my shop.
It was those guys, yeah. All of this exuberant, impulsive energy while he leads a dance with death contrasts starkly with the lazy, apathetic slob we saw before. Upon first impressions, I said, this is a man who doesn't bother exerting himself any more than he has to. Apparently not, when it comes to murder. The scene immediately established he can kill these guys with one blow. Why bother going for the gun? Once he has the gun, why bother using anything else? He goes out of his way to mix things up, to do these stunts and add these stylish flourishes. You can see his excitement in doing so. In this scene, Shimomura communicates a character that has mastery over, but also revels in the fight, in making it as cool or stylish or fun for himself as possible, that consciously makes an art of killing. Someone whose priorities align with those of an action director, of Yuji. You know, Jackie's character isn't trying to make the fight spectacular. Jackie is. He's contriving these stunts into the choreography to make it seem like, no matter how crazy, this is the best or only course of action for his character. Here, Dante is the contrivance. Through him, this is the best course of action because it is spectacular. Kind of a wet dream of a character for an action director to direct, right? And it makes a lot of sense why Dante is like this on a meta level and in respect to the medium. I'll get to that a bit later. But in this scene, we don't really have an answer. Why is this fun? Why is this what you're concerned with? And why are you the way you are when you aren't fighting? You could make interpretations, but the context needed to be more conclusive is found throughout the rest of the series. This scene works to construct the character that invites those questions, by presenting and juxtaposing Dante's two sides. And it establishes a nice through line by which we can characterize Dante, I think. Messy, but stylish. This is something Yuji gets across with the first thing he does, and that element is carried throughout the scene in its entirety, through damn near every action he takes. That is Dante. That is action directing, and that is the end of the scene. Also, as an aside, I've always wanted to say how much I love this line.
Don't bet on it.
In context, this is Dante simply commenting that the fight isn't over. But from a meta sense, stylish action games are about replayability, to the extent you could argue the game doesn't really start until you complete the first playthrough. Upon completing the first playthrough, unlocking the next difficulty, and starting it, you're presented with the opening cutscene again. And just as you're about to regain control, Dante assures you that no, you have not finished this game yet. The best is very much yet to come. A trick that was echoed in Bayonetta 1 with,
As long as there's music, I'll keep on dancing.
It's a shame we don't do that anymore. Anyway, that was a perfect display of Shimomura's directing chops and his insane action choreography. How potently Dante was characterized, and notice I barely paid any mind to dialogue. How hard that fight went, and how fun it all was. The weaving between tension and humor, the excellent cinematography, and the perfect pacing all came together to just make an awesome scene. I think Yuji is an excellent action director in his own right, but it is also the legacy he carries into the world of gaming that makes him such a noteworthy creator. What makes his contributions to this genre so defining and cool. Going into this project, I knew next to nothing about the world of Kung Fu cinema and the impact it had on media as a whole, but coming out of it, I see a lot of connections I hadn't before, and have even more to appreciate about Yuji's contributions than I had initially thought. Hong Kong Kung Fu, in my estimation, is the pinnacle of action in cinema. And it was so self-evidently so that when the sensibilities that comprised it were brought to mainstream cinema, they influenced action all over the world across mediums. And here, in the stylish action genre, we have action defined by not someone who merely adopted these sensibilities, but was born to them. Yuji Shimomura is among the last generation of people who got into Kung Fu before it became cool, before the Hong Kong cinema industry fucking died, who studied and trained in the pure form of the art under genuine and storied practitioners before it became diluted through proliferation. And he was able to bring the mentality that informed the pinnacle of action cinema to help define what would go on to be regarded as the pinnacle of action gaming. I know there is a trend of trying to legitimize the medium of games through connection or comparison to the higher art form of cinema, lol. And I agree that for the most part, that's cringe and unnecessary and potentially harmful, but it is simply incorrect to say that games stand to gain nothing from films. Film was the original art of the moving image, and as such, particular genres that are concerned with depicting life in real time, with visual storytelling, with movement, such as the impossibly broad action genre, can absolutely benefit from the sensibilities filmmakers have pioneered and codified. It's so fucking cool that stylish action has been imbued with the filmmaking sensibilities of Kung Fu. And we're not talking about a pastiche here. DMC is not the product of creatives saying, Kung Fu is cool, let's do a Kung Fu, although there's nothing wrong with that. It is its own creative endeavor, one that stood to benefit from those sensibilities, got one of the best guys possible to bring them to the table, and in doing so carried the legacy of the art form forward and evolved it by leveraging the particular aesthetic of DMC and the unique strengths of the medium of gaming. That's really fucking cool, right? Not the notion that stylish action derives from Kung Fu, but that Kung Fu lives on, expands, and even improves through stylish action. And not just in the cutscenes. As I opened with, the gameplay of these games is about producing awesome action scenes, and there is such a fitting connection here I only learned about through this project. My dude, milady, do you know what Kung Fu means? The literal definition, it's not a fighting style. Kung Fu is excellence, achieved through practice, repetition, and discipline. A perfectly cooked steak can be a display of Kung Fu. A flawless dance routine, a violin recital, an S-rank run of a game. Many games, but stylish action games in essence, are devoted to fostering and rewarding Kung Fu. Through the depiction of elaborate fight scenes. Stylish action is, in the most literal sense, a spiritual successor to Kung Fu cinema. Dante is the Kung Fu protagonist archetype made meta by introducing player input as a factor. That's why he has the body of the action hero, but the mind of the action director, because his mind is supposed to be in line with the player. Seriously, listening to kung fu filmmakers talk about their craft, what's necessary to achieve what they do, what compels them to do so, it's Devil May Cry, dude. It is the experience of playing these games. I didn't expect to watch a Jackie Chan interview and be able to sympathize with him. Oh, I've been there, man. Just like the time from the experimentation in choreographing and the endless takes to nail the execution to the reason I'm doing it in the first place. Excellence. For the sake of excellence. Because it's fucking awesome to watch.
You can do it, except do you have the patience or not?
So that is Yuji Shimomura. That was but a glimpse into his legacy. I think it's really cool. Again, I recommend checking out his movie Versus if you want to see some obscure DMC adjacent media. I recommend his movie Reborn as probably his best film. You know, any game he's worked on is gonna have some banger scenes in them. A katana versus an electric guitar? Well, would you look at that? And finally, for the sake of the man, as I'm sure he'd say the same, please, watch a Jackie Chan movie. Seriously, watch Project A. Do it. Watch Drunken Master 2, Police Story, Wheels on Meals. Watch them in Cantonese. I cannot understate how much I appreciate having watched these movies. And if you're a fan of these games, there's a good chance you're missing out on something you will adore. So please, check them out. I hope you found this interesting or fun. I thought it was a fascinating rabbit hole to go down. I'm glad I was able to drag you down with me. And as always, thanks for watching.
Oh my god, it's Jackie Chan! Oh my god, it's Jackie Chan! Oh my god, it's Jackie Chan! Hi there!
So for the credits section of this video, the first thing I have to say is I have people to credit now. Look at their names. My patrons. I love you. Secondly, I want to shout out fellow YouTuber Jibu. So, the day, I shit you not, the day I started working on this as my main project, his video about Yuji, until now, the only video about Yuji on YouTube popped up on my timeline. I was gonna be the first, man. He fucking got me. His video is more focused on his career. He covers more of his projects. So if you want to learn more about Yuji, if you want a more comprehensive breakdown of his story, please check it out and say something nice in the comments. Next, I have an anecdote to share. Since working on this project, I've become a lot more cognizant of action directing in cutscenes and movies. I pay attention, you know, see if anything stands out to me as particularly good, and if something does, I look up who was responsible. So far, most things do not stand out, but there were a few recent instances where I was compelled to check who the action director was. There's this scene from one of the Resident Evil animated movies. I mean, this is sick. And I was curious who did the cutscenes for Metal Gear Rising. And both times, Kensuke Sonomura of Yuden Flameworks. What are the odds? Well, I mean, okay, these are both Japanese projects from Capcom and Platinum, companies that Yuji has established relationships with, so it's not that crazy a coincidence, right? Well, there was one other thing, something new this time, that stood out to me. The most recent Sony State of Play ended with, I think it's the 34th Phantom Blade Zero trailer? Does anybody actually care? And there was a scene of a dude sword fighting two opponents while juggling a baby. And although it was a very short scene, it immediately caught my attention. It's fun. The choreography is slick, frenetic, and varied. The cinematography is expressive and purposeful. The editing, sharp, precise, clear, a bit too quick for my taste at times, but overall there's a flair here that belies personality, you know? Whoever's behind this knows and loves what they're doing. It stands out. It's good. And this is a newcomer. A Chinese studio. This is their flagship game. I wonder if we've got an up-and-coming action director on our hands. Who did the action directing? Oh. He's Japanese. Kenji Tanigaki, pictured here with Yuji Shimomura and their mentor, Donnie Yen. Also a graduate of Kurata Action Club, by the way. So yeah, this dude responsible for the only action directing in a contemporary project that stood out to me in recent memory, is essentially the Virgil to Yuji's Dante. He came up constantly in my research. They are cut from the exact same cloth. Phantom Blade is actually Tanigaki's debut in the world of games. He's only been doing TV and movies so far, so I'm pretty interested to see what he brings to the table. Hopefully this won't be the last we see of him. But yeah, I just thought that was all hilarious. That every single time I've been impressed by action directing, it seems to lead back to Yuji in some way. And speaking of leading back to Yuji, I have one last note on Yuji's work that I missed in my analysis, which is crazy because it should be so apparent. Slow motion. Yuji's use of slow-mo. It is ubiquitous in his games. It is in almost, if not every scene. He'll mostly use it to make fast interactions more legible and give certain moments a second to breathe. Sometimes he'll use it to buy himself more time to do something cool with the camera, but it is constant. It is a tool he uses so much that it has become characteristic of the rhythm of his scenes. A signature stroke in his handwriting, as it were. And I think he uses it well. Again, he never just does it to do it. The rationale behind each instance is immediately apparent, but what strikes me most is how natural it feels. I mean, it took me way too long to even notice how much he was using it. That's probably because it was implemented with rhythm in mind. Rhythm is a key aspect of action directing. It's something that sets action directors apart, like a rapper's flow. And Yuji's rhythm in his games is quite uniquely composed with liberal use of slow-mo. And why does he use so much of it? Well, it's probably down to the medium again. First off, with choreography this consistently insane and fantastical, there is no shortage of instances worth taking another moment to appreciate. But moreover, he can. When playing with these scenes in editing software, he's at liberty to slow anything down, or not, whenever he wants. Whereas in live action, you need to shoot the scene with slow-mo in mind if you plan on using it. I do wonder if you'd see more of it in his live-action movies if it was as accessible, or if he's just leaning into it in his games because it's accessible, you know? It's a novelty of the medium, so revel in it. And this is exactly what's so interesting about Yuji's work. Freedom to utilize slow-mo like this is a luxury action filmmakers did not have. And in Yuji, we see an early example of someone bringing the sensibilities of those action filmmakers into a landscape where things like this are possible. And in leveraging those possibilities, the characteristics of the medium, became an intrinsic part of his expression within that medium. The paper he was writing on helped define his handwriting. And this is what he wrote.